Alanna is an educator, activist, consultant, and lecturer in the areas of economic democracy, land rights, financing sustainable development, and public finance policy reform. She is co-director of Earth Rights Institute, a civil society organization working for economic justice and peaceful resolution of conflicts, a United Nations NGO representative for the International Union for Land Value Taxation, a board member of United for a Fair Economy, and on the advisory council of the Prout Research Institute of Venezuela. Alanna recently completed development work on the Land Rights and Land Value Capture program of the UN Habitat's newly launched Global Land Tool Network. This program, intended to address the UN Millennium Development Goal of improving the lives of 100 million slum dwellers by the year 2020, describes the what, why, and how of this Earth rights policy in preparation for worldwide implementation projects. In 2004, Alanna was with the team that launched the first eco-village, a living model of sustainability, in Nigeria in the Niger Delta town of Odi. In 2001, she was a candidate for Congress in the 9th District of Pennsylvania. In 1993, she initiated tax reform legislation and worked with state legislators to guide it through governmental hearings to nearly unanimous passage of Senate Bill 211, signed by Governor Thomas Ridge as Act 108 in November of 1998. Her published articles on tax reform have been useful to legislators in the states of Pennsylvania, Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. Her articles are referenced in the literature of the Association of Bay Area Governments in California, in a recent issue of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis Review, in Dialogues, a publication of the Canada West Foundation, in several books including The Natural Wealth of Nations, a Worldwide Institute book by David Rudman. She is one of several people featured in Planet Champions, Adventures in Saving the World by Jack Yost. She has given lectures and presented papers on alternatives to neoliberal economics, the land problem, green tax, and land value tax policy at numerous venues, including the Congressional Black Caucus Forum on Energy in West Africa, UN Habitat World Urban Forums, E.F. Schumacher Society, Chautauqua Institution, and Eastern Economics Association. In addition to her work with Earth Rights Institute, Alanna maintains a psycho-spiritual counseling practice. She is a mother of two and grandmother of one. She enjoys permaculture gardening at her eco-homestead in central South Pennsylvania and playing guitar, piano, and Native American flute.
Well, I've come to connect peace, local to global, in terms of, I say it's either warfare or earth share. I mean, if you look at it, most wars are over grabbing territory, grabbing land, grabbing resources, and it's not about sharing the earth. So our democratic constitutions are incomplete. The democracy has a crack in the Liberty Bell, you might say. That's the way I put it. You know, that crack in the bell, we didn't know how to make the bell. It only rang for a few months till it cracked. Well, the democracy itself has a major flaw, and that is that we don't have an economic justice, economic democracy, which the movement I work with bases that on the rights to the earth as a birthright, an equal birthright by all people. And we connect this to taxation policy of all things. It would say property of what you create with your labor, it should not be taxed. We want work, we want good things produced, don't tax them. But we can't have the land treated as a market commodity for buying and selling and speculating and hoarding. And this is the problem in our cities with growing homelessness. It's a lack of land rights, clearly. If we don't have a local to global ethic of birthright to the earth, we have not much of a basis to resolve these conflicts. I mean, Gaza is clearly a land grab. take genocides or land grabs. Hitler was all about Lebensraum, increasing the living space for the German people at the expense of the other people who were murdered. It's the same old story if you look at it in that big picture. So now the Netanyahu's government's doing the same thing, trying to expand the land base, and we know that Gaza has a lot of oil off of its coast. We also know that Ukraine, in the Donbass region, that was the region that is Russian speaking, and that the regime in Kiev, after that Maidan revolution that Victoria Nuland was instrumental in 2014, that Kiev government started persecuting the Russian speaking people in the eastern Ukraine, which is that Donbass region. So those people declared autonomy. And to protect those fellow Russian speaking people is another reason that Putin felt that he had to push back the Kiev regime that had become criminal and Nazified and so on. But the Donbass has a lot of mineral wealth. And Lindsey Graham, our very well-known Congressman Lindsey Graham, actually said that the Ukraine war is about the $12 trillion worth of mineral resources in Ukraine. We can't let Putin have that. He would just give it to China and so on. I've never seen such a bold, upfront declaration that the war is about a resource grab. And in the western Ukraine, you have that really rich agricultural land. And Ukraine previously said no foreigners could own their land. Only people in Ukraine could own Ukraine land. So since the Maidan Revolution, that's changed. And there's been a lot of U.S. corporations that have grabbed that rich agricultural land in Ukraine. So you just see this land problem worldwide, local to global. And so an economics of peace addresses this exploitation at the root with fair share rights to the earth given by taxing, using the public finance to secure for the people what we call the commons rent, the rent of our common heritage, which is very high in city centers. It's an enormous sum that's privatized. That should be socialized. On the other hand, we socialize labor and tax labor. That should be privatized. So this economics approach is totally out of the right-left box. I would say on the left that we confirm the fairness, so huge concern about wealth inequality, but getting to that at the source. And from the right, the keynote has been freedom. So we don't see any contradiction between fairness and freedom. So why it's out of the box is beyond old right and old left. The emphasis on maximum freedom and maximum fairness in the economy and in society. So I probably said enough as an introduction. There you go. Maybe I did write a book on this. There's lots of books and resources. There's lots of organizations you can join if you want to continue on with this subject.
Yeah, I remember you saying that they should really tax the land, not the property that is on it, because what is happening is that people, investors buy the land real cheap, and then they put all these expensive houses on it, and then they make money on the building while they are, or just holding it till the housing market it goes to their way. So we are pretty much worshiping the buildings and at the expense of the land. That's what I understand you're saying.
Well, the approach is putting the property tax on the proper basis. And so in terms of the houses, if you fix up your house, you add a unit for another family member or something, you fix it up, you're supposed to pay a higher property tax because your house value goes up. But we say that's not right. We want to encourage building improvements. We want to encourage housing restoration. So in the property tax, we shift the tax off of the house and the buildings onto the value of the land itself. And most middle-class people and homeowners, they just have struggled to get a house and a little house lot. So when you shift it off the house and onto the land value, most homeowners pay less, which is a really good thing because homeowners are big voters. And you also shift it on to those who own and control the boarded up buildings, the vacant lots. These are all scars. These are all, I mean, their essence is that they are socially undesirable, maybe even criminal behaviors when people are homeless to then hold land out of use that's needed for housing. And that's really a line for the wealth inequality, this housing problem, because as land values go up faster than wages, and this is an economic law, it's called the law of rent, which was intentionally taken out of the economics lexicon 100 years ago when power elites invented neoliberal economics, which we're under. And they made the term land, which means all the earth, subset of capital and labor. Whereas classical economics has land, labor, capital, and to address wealth inequality, you actually treat the land as if it's a commons, and your private use rights is conditional upon paying your land value tax, which is simply a better form of property tax. So there's no big disruption. And yet it causes a whole lot of beneficial things. Like I'm in Pennsylvania, and our capital city, Harrisburg, was the second worst city, most distressed city in the United States a few decades ago. So they started applying this approach. They went from thousands of boarded up buildings to just a handful. They had a whole turnaround, building permits, which you have building, you mean you have more employment, and you don't have these boarded up buildings, so you don't have the arson problem. It totally turned Harrisburg around, and every place we've done this reform has had positive effects. So we do work nationally and globally for policy implementation, and we always very warmly invite people, all of you, to kind of dig into this, because you can be a real power there in your community, and we can support and direct you in how to go about this approach. And so keep in mind the theme of the meeting now is peace. So we think peace means the absence of war. We know it means the presence of justice. What about justice, which means fairness right where we live? I think most of us are living places where we didn't used to have homelessness, and now we do. So my kids were born in San Francisco when I was there. The place is a terrible wreck now. They brought in Prop 13, which froze the property tax upside down, made it the wrong way. And those of us who understood this knew it was going to wreck California, and it has. So we don't want to go that direction. We want to go the direction that I'm talking about, tax shift to the commons rent, which is unearned by individuals, but it is what is created by society. This value of land and resources is created by the demand of human beings for land and resources. Is socially created. So whoever can, if you're a corporation, whoever can pay the most to access a resource, well, you can have the contract. That means you're paying the most into the commons fund for access to any natural resource. Of course, with environmental protections built in, that's the other part of this. But when we say earth rights, we mean it in two ways. The rights of the earth for protection, which we know from the environmental movement, but what's rarely talked about is the rights of people to the earth itself as a human right. And that really, the original founder of Earth Day, John McConnell, founded it for the spring equinox in March. And he had the earth rights policy for peace very, very clear. And you have to wonder why the big money decided to put their money behind April 22nd, Earth Day, which is only like planting trees and caring for the earth, which is very nice, but it doesn't have that economic justice component of our human right to the earth itself. So if you think if we don't have any right to the earth, which is everything you look around where the room you're sitting, everything comes from labor on land. Every object comes out of the earth. If that person-planet relationship is not fair and just, nothing that's created is fair and just. So it quite naturally leads to this gross wealth inequality, and it leads to a war economy. We have the war economy because because wealthy elites have made a lot of money from war, and their mindset is so degraded that wherever they can make profit, they're going to make profit. So they'll make profit by using the military industrial complex to secure their land and resource grabs.
The Earth Belongs to Everyone. Articles and essays by Alanna Hartzok.
Thank you for listening. For more info, visit
The IU, the International Union for Land Value Taxation.